Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Keith McNutt. I'm the Executive Director of the Western Region of the Entertainment Community Fund. And on behalf of Annette Benning, who is our National Board Chair, and our CEO, Joe Benincasa, and everyone at the fund, we want to welcome you to this next in our series of webinars that we have been presenting since January when the fires first occurred in Los Angeles. I want to say a special thank you to all of the unions and guilds, associations, and our fellow nonprofits who work in the entertainment industry who have been co-sponsoring these webinars with us and each offering their own kinds of resources. I think collectively we want everybody who is recovering from this traumatic situation to know that we are here. We are continuing to try to listen to what people are saying they need and build workshops where we can bring resources to you, like today's webinar with these wonderful resources. So I won't go on for too long. I'll just remind you that on our end, the Entertainment Community Fund continues to provide emergency financial assistance to people affected. We have a strong network and program of mental health supports, grief groups to help people with coping. We have our health insurance team helping people navigate changes to health insurance, our affordable housing programs, and our career center helping people who are needing to find supplemental work or transitional process to new careers. So there are a lot of resources here just with our fund, but also with the other partner organizations in this coalition, and we hope you will take advantage of it. So I'll move on right away so that we can get to the information quickly. And I'm going to introduce Tina Hokum, who is our Director of Social Services here in Los Angeles and has been putting together all of these webinars from day one. So thank you, Tina, for all that work, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. As Keith mentioned, I am Tina Hokum. I'm the Director of Social Services for the Entertainment Community Fund. If you've been with us before and attended one of our previous webinars, welcome back. And if this is your first one, we are so glad that you could join us today for our webinar, Navigating Recovery, Building a Property Loss Inventory. I'll be facilitating our conversation with our two speakers, both from Operation Hope, Andrew Avina, who works as a disaster operations coach and coordinator, and Nikki Santiago, who works as a small business disaster coach. Before we get into our content today, I'm going to briefly describe how we're going to use our webinar space. So on the bottom of your toolbar of your screen, you'll see that we have closed caption as an option. To utilize this feature, you need to click the closed caption icon, and I invite you to do that now. Also on the bottom toolbar, you'll see the chat icon. Click on that icon to see the chat bar pop up just right alongside your screen. Today, we are going to use that chat feature to share resources such as PDFs and links. Please know that you can cut and paste information from the chat bar into another Word document, into your notes section, into your cell phone. You can compile an email to send to yourself. But realize that following today's session, we will send everyone the information we placed in the chat in a follow-up email. So you really can just listen and absorb. You're going to get all of our resources after the fact. You can submit a question by clicking the Q&A icon. We really want to invite everybody to get your questions answered today. If you want to submit an anonymous question, it's recommended to click the icon and click anonymous before you begin to type. Otherwise, you may accidentally submit a question with your name appearing. We're going to curate questions as they come in. We're going to make every effort to answer each question, but might need to limit what we can get to ensure we get through all of our material. Our format today will be to cover and review a section of content, then open up for questions related to that section only, and then we're going to move on to the next section. Lastly, This webinar will be recorded and available on our Entertainment Community Fund website and client portal. If you know a colleague who could benefit from today's information but couldn't make it with us today, please let them know how to access today's important information. Before we welcome Andrew and Nikki, we want to emphasize that all of our community partners participating in this event, as Keith mentioned, are offering a wide range of services and supports. And if you need help, we hope that you reach out. We want to highlight just a few resources to make sure everybody's aware of what's new. United Policyholders is offering a webinar on December 18th on wildfire smoke damage and your insurance rights. Please see the chat and the information for more details. If you are unfamiliar with United Policyholders, we really want to encourage you to get familiar. Get familiar with all of their psychoeducational webinars that are so relevant right now in this phase of recovery. Additionally, the Pacific Palisades Community Renewal Center opened a few months ago. They are offering 12 free sessions of therapy for folks that were affected and lived in the Palisades area. They're offering a lot of arts-based healing program for kids, families, and adults. Additionally, the Maple Center, who is providing the therapy resources through the Palisades Community Center, is also offering therapy through their traditional space and their location for anybody affected that lived in the Altadena community. So if you need help, please reach out. The Alter Care Line provides free peer counseling support specifically for folks affected by the wildfire. So if you're having an off moment and an off day, you really could just use a kind, supportive ear in that moment. You can access their calendar and set up an appointment, and someone will call you right back. Here at the Entertainment Community Fund, last Friday, we provided a webinar with information around emotional recovery and the phases of emotional recovery as we approach the 1-year anniversary. This webinar will be posted on our website and client portal later this week. Again, if you missed it and think you can benefit or know a colleague that could benefit from the information, we hope you take a look. We continue to offer our weekly drop-in gathering space, Recovering Together, every Tuesday, 12 to 1:15. This is a group for those people who have lost their home or their residence or have suffered some significant damage and are just a space to come together. We continue to offer a 4-week group called Putting the Pieces Together, which is a space to come together and explore and get support around feelings of grief and loss and transition. Okay, now let's jump right into it. I'd like to welcome our guests, Andrew Avina and Nikki Santiago. Thank you both so much for being with us today and sharing your knowledge. Hi, Andrew. So just to get us started, could you please share an overview of Operation Hope and the work that you both are doing there?
Absolutely. So Operation Hope is a nonprofit that focuses on financial literacy for all as our core mission. We have a number of programs related to credit money management, homeownership, foreclosure prevention. We have a small business program as well as a e-commerce program, including our disaster program, which I'm a part of, and so is my counterpart, Nikki. Through those services, we help survivors within all the affected communities in California navigate their FEMA applications, apply for capital like SBA loans, help them through their insurance navigation, and as well as mortgage assistance guidance. We also do resource navigation and advocacy for our survivors. So as the current structure stands, Nikki, focuses on the small business recovery, and I'm more focused on these individual survivors. Although our work tends to overlap, we both serve the Palisades, Malibu, Topanga, Altadena communities, and there are no income restrictions or any kind of hindrances to work with us. We work alongside with the LTRGs, which I can talk a little bit more about later on in this call, and can connect survivors with a number of resources as part of some of our services with the navigation aspect of it. So that's pretty much us in a nutshell.
Great. So just to kind of highlight for everybody who's participating, you're going to get a lot of information today, specifically around building a property loss inventory. However, If you need more information and more support around that task, you have questions about your insurance, about all the things that Andrew just mentioned, you're encouraged and know that this is a resource for you. It's a free resource through Operation Hope. In the chat, we're going to put their information, but also how to get connected, which is to create a client portal and to request an appointment. And I don't know if you want to say anything specifically about that, Andrew, about how to get connected.
Absolutely. So there's two different ways that people can get involved with us. If you go directly to our operationhope.org website, there is an area where you can register to be a coaching client. And from there, all of our programs will be available to you at no cost. You do not need to have been involved in a disaster to take advantage of these resources. The link that I believe we have submitted is a personal link to work with me directly. So after the call, if you do find that you find value in working with Operation Hope and it's something that I can be of service to you with, feel free to use this link and you could register with me directly and you don't have to do anything else within the portal. It'll automatically get you involved with the disaster program. And from there, we would just coordinate a time to schedule an appointment. Whereas my availability is entirely appointment based, but I am very accommodating to everyone that I work with. So in the event that there is a time that, maybe we're just booked, just let me know via email and we'll try to coordinate a time where we can get you scheduled on the books.
Great. So let's dive in to the subject today, which is building a property loss inventory. So just to make sure we're all starting in the same place, can you help us understand what is a property loss inventory?
Absolutely. So the loss inventory is the single most important document in your recovery when it comes to your personal belongings. So whether you have an insurance claim or whether you're working with FEMA, they both rely on this sheet for the same reason. So after a disaster, you could have your insurance claim adjuster, walk to the property, or you could have a FEMA inspector walk to the property. But it's very difficult for either of them to see what was previously there, especially if it's a total loss. So they can't verify what you owned, what was damaged, and especially what it would cost to replace those items. So that inventory becomes your evidence to basically present to them to get compensation through your policies. So with FEMA, they use this list to determine whether the items that you've lost qualify for their personal property assistance, and then how much financial assistance you may receive. The insurance companies will use it as like your formal proof of loss under their contents portion of your policy. Because neither FEMA or the insurance can assume what household items you may have had, it's pretty much up to us to outline that full list to send to them. So what you owned, how many items that you had, what was the condition of those items before the disaster, and then what would it reasonably cost to replace them today are some of the main criteria that they're going to look at to help understand how much within your policy or within the FEMA application you would qualify for. Without having this list, the entire claim would be incomplete. So it doesn't matter what agency or adjuster would be reviewing this claim. Without this document, you would not be able to move forward. So having a detailed inventory will just be able to give them some clarity, and with clarity, we get faster results and faster outcomes.
Great. So, my next question is why is it important to have? And you kind of just outlined all of that, but just want to highlight again, I know we hear a lot from folks like, is it worth it? I don't know, right? Is it worth, I mean, it's a hard thing to do. And so just wanted to see if we could gain any insight from you other than what you just said. Like, if I'm ambivalent about whether I should do it, do you have any suggestions about whether I should or not?
Absolutely. So when FEMA enters or declares a disaster and they allocate funds for the given state, for each survivor that has an active account, there is federal funds already allocated to you. The only thing that's holding that back is just providing the proper documentation to verify and what the quantity is of that amount that they can disperse to you. So, in my opinion, it is always worth it to explore what you can get from FEMA, even if it's a few thousand, because in space with limited grants, limited loan opportunities for a lot of people that were already in a difficult situation prior to the fire, resources can be scarce, and it's a cyclical situation with grants and like free resources essentially. So taking advantage of what you can with FEMA and including your insurance is like to me top priority. Even if it does tend to drag out for one reason or another. Working with an organization like Operation Hope, United Policyholders, there's a number of other groups that can help to navigate that. But it is definitely something that I would recommend every person try to exploit or explore, as much as they can.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to open it up. This is our first pause to see if there's anybody that's with us today that has a question about what is the property loss inventory? Why is it important to have? So I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but I just wanted to open it up and I'm going to wait like maybe a few minutes, not even a minute, to see if anybody has any specific related questions to that. Okay. Looks like we're okay. So let's move on. Can you explain to us what's the difference between an insurance policy, right? Insurance policy, property loss inventory, and my FEMA claim? And, is there a lane to do both?
Sure. So let's start with the biggest misconception that most survivors have. The insurance and FEMA are not the same, and they don't serve the same purpose. Because of that, the way you interact with them and the way you build your personal property list must be different for each one. So let's dive into insurance. The insurance is a, oh, I'm sorry, I thought maybe somebody had a question.
No, I think there was just a little bit of a glitch. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Um, so diving into insurance, that's a contract that you pay for. So that company is legally obligated to cover certain types of losses. And your policy could typically lay out what's covered, what's not covered, what the limits are of your coverage, any deductibles that you might have, and whether items are replaced at depreciated value or replacement value. And we can dive a little bit into that if there's any questions regarding what those two mean. Um, the insurance is designed to restore your belongings as close as possible to what you owned before the disaster. So that's why the insurance would expect details, an itemized list, any descriptions or values to your items, any proof wherever possible. So photos, receipts, statements, anything like that, to have a complete accounting of your losses. So they pay based on the specific items you lost. FEMA, however, is not insurance. So they will not restore your home to a pre-disaster condition. FEMA does not replace everything that you lost. FEMA only provides basic essential assistance only when you either have no insurance or your insurance payout was not enough, or your insurance did not cover certain categories. If you met any experienced delays or unmet needs during the recovery, that could be another thing that FEMA would cover. So what FEMA would cover is very broad, but it would cover things like your essential furniture, your basic household items, basic clothing, any necessary appliances and items needed to make a home quote unquote safe and functional. So they pay based on categories, not specific items. Um, and then how to navigate both systems, I think was the other question, right? So when you have both an insurance policy and a FEMA claim, this is the order that is recommended to work with. So before you can even work with FEMA, you need to file your insurance claim first, and you need to have that insurance claim closed out completely before FEMA can understand what was paid for and what they can cover as far as like uninsured losses. Um, so if you were to try to use a insurance inventory list and send the same list to FEMA, um, they would consider that something called a duplication of benefits, which they would not cover. So FEMA again will only cover what is uninsured or what is not covered in the policy. Um, and so when you're working with your insurance, building a full detailed personal property inventory would become like your quote unquote master list. Um, Once you have an a determination letter from FEMA, I'm sorry, from your insurance that the claim is closed, you can then submit that over to FEMA so they can verify that you have no other funds that could possibly come in from your insurance and that you are fully paid out based on what the adjuster had determined. Submitting a FEMA list before the insurance finalizes could often lead to a delay, any type of denial, or typically a letter that would say they're trying to request more documentation because they don't fully understand kind of where the losses are. Um, so when you use your insurance inventory to create a simplified FEMA version, FEMA will not want to know what the name brand is or what the model is, any specifications or luxury items, any hobby items or excess duplicates of what you already had with your insurance claim will not be accepted by FEMA. The only thing they really want is the category. So that could be like kitchen, bathroom, bedding, or bedroom, etc. What the quantity was of those items, and then what the basic purpose is.
And I think you had shared with us the FEMA link, right? So we'll put that in the chat. Is that right, Andrew? Yeah, so that will show up in the chat for everybody. Curious, and don't know if anybody out there was thinking this too. If I was a renter, right, and I just didn't happen to have insurance, if I'm understanding you correctly, am I okay to just go ahead and do my property loss inventory for FEMA then? Because I really don't have an insurance claim. Is that the right thinking?
That's correct. And in that context, all of the categories that I mentioned, like bathroom, kitchen, bedroom, etc., um, that would be a much broader inventory list because you did not have covered insurance for those items. So I believe the maximum that FEMA would offer for personal property, I believe, is like $42,800 total. So unfortunately, the way that FEMA operates, it's not designed to make everyone whole, but it is designed to try and help you get the most that you can within their policy limit to give you that jump start towards recovery. And again, it would only cover those basic essentials. So if you had, maybe $100,000 worth of inventory, and you were under, or I'm sorry, if you were uninsured, then you would be taking a significant loss. But you would still be able to get something through FEMA. And in my opinion, getting something is better than nothing in this context. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think in a conversation we had had previously, Andrew, you mentioned that by now, everybody should have received some communication from their insurance about their personal property, their policy. Is that accurate? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes. So as soon as you file a claim, you should have been assigned with a insurance adjuster, and there should have been already correspondence from early on in January. If for whatever reason you have not received any kind of conversation from your insurance company, I would take this opportunity to reach out to them and try to engage with them. And if there's any difficulties with reaching them, or if you're just having issues with the insurance company in general, we can definitely help navigate that and connect you with resources to try to speed that kind of process along so you can get the support that you need.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to pause there and highlight and make sure everybody's, receiving what you just said, that if you are sitting there with your insurance policy, right, you're not sure what to do next, you're not sure even just what we're covering today, which is a lot of information. an actionable step you can do is to click on the link, get a direct appointment with Andrew, right? And to just begin getting more support. Andrew can make calls with the insurance company for you, with you, right? Just to kind of concretize what we're talking about as far as the level of support, if you happen to need that. Going to pause again just to see if there's any questions anybody has on anything we've covered so far. Let's see, I do see one or two questions here. So do we have to wait until our entire insurance claim is closed or just the personal property portion of the claim? And I'm thinking they must be meaning, so to when to submit to FEMA? Do they have to wait till that claim is closed? And can you speak to that?
Sure. It really depends on the different items that you are working through with FEMA. So if you have things like moving and storage or medical or otherwise, and you have your insurance policy has a claim with any of those things, whether it's your health insurance or otherwise, FEMA will need those claims to be closed out to determine what they can cover. But if we're just strictly talking about your personal property, you do not need to have your dwelling, for rebuild closed out and already in the rebuild process to work with FEMA. That's definitely not the case. You would just have to have that personal property closed out specifically to then work with FEMA for that particular item. But if you still have a claim open with your insurance and there are other items with FEMA that you could work with, such as submitting items for moving and storage as an example, as long as you don't have like an open claim with any kind of insurance that's going to cover the cost of those things, then you should be okay to process that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope that answers the question. The next question that came in was on someone's FEMA portal. FEMA is currently saying that the application has been completed, but they never submitted a full personal property list of losses. And so they're wondering what action step will happen. Will FEMA reopen their case to look at their property loss?
Sure. There has been a lot of issues across the board with the FEMA portal. I believe it's the disasterassistance.gov account that everyone's assigned. I've had some clients that have had, they haven't submitted anything, but they had an application that said it was completed or something was submitted on their behalf, and that wasn't the case. I've also had some instances where there was a categorization for flood damage for a total loss that was from fire damage. So it's just a simple issue that we just need to call in. So I've worked with countless survivors to call the FEMA hotline, get in touch with a specialist, take a look at the case files specifically for whatever the application was that the issue is resulting from, and just to request them to open it back up. And they're really good at doing that. So I don't think this would be a very difficult task to do. And this is something that every individual can do themselves, is to call the FEMA hotline and get to the bottom of that. But if you'd like some extra help to kind of navigate that, that is something that we do. So feel free to schedule some time and we can coordinate that together.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And I know we hear a lot that it's so hard to get through on that call line, right? It feels like that's sort of a Herculean task in and of itself. So again, if you want some support around that, this would be a great example of how to connect, use our link, and get an appointment with Andrew, who maybe has some magic on how to get through to FEMA in that way. I don't see any other questions based on this section. So we're going to move into sort of the big one, right? Which is, can you help us begin to think about how to begin? How do we begin to create this personal property list?
Absolutely. So when we're creating a personal property list, there is a template that I like to refer people to from United Policyholders. It's a really, really great resource to utilize. It kind of fully maps out like what the typical insurance company would utilize. And then we can always retrofit that to what FEMA needs later. So that is something that first and foremost, a quick template to start with could be an Excel sheet. But how we do that, as far as figuring out what the items are, we would have to reconstruct your belongings either from memory or from documentation, whether you have receipts, or bank statements, photos, anything that you can to help you map out like what the home looked like and what was in each room, before the fire. So one thing that that I found helpful for a lot of people is the approach of just mapping out mentally a walkthrough within your home, one room at a time. So try imagining standing at the doorway of one room, start at the corner and then slowly imagine yourself walking around the room in a circle. Anything that you could have seen, like furniture, items on top of the furniture, items inside your drawers and cabinets, things on the wall, anything stored under the beds or closets. I can tell you off the bat, for most people, it could be a very daunting task. So using other resources like old photos from your phone, any social media pictures, or an online order history. Maybe you use Amazon a lot, any type of email or digital receipts, even talking with your family or people that have frequented, visiting could also help to fully map that out. So, because I think some time has passed now, we're almost a year into the anniversary. Um, Everyone's memories are essentially formatted in layers. So I'm pretty sure early on, it's been very difficult for a lot of people to just navigate and try to remember, everything. But as you are working through this process, um, because memories don't come all at once, start with the big items and try to imagine yourself, what else was in those rooms based on how big it is. That's another example. Um, there is also another resource that I can recommend at this point. It's called Bevel. It's a website. Actually a software that uses AI to use photos to kind of map out an inventory list for you. So we've had discussions with the founders of that organization, and it looks like we might be incorporating that as part of one of our support services within Operation Hope. So I remember I was talking with Tina prior to this about like there may be some softwares to look at. This one is a really good resource, and I believe it's a free resource. So definitely feel free to take a look at that. We don't endorse any type of like for-profit or paid-for services. So the fact that this is being offered for free is a really unique opportunity to kind of help bridge the gap if you have additional trouble trying to map things out mentally.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we don't have that, the Bevel. So maybe we can get that from you, Andrew, after the
Absolutely.
fact, and that would be included in our email, just so everybody can access that or think about that. Um, I think it's important just to take a minute and honor how difficult and complex this inventory process is and can be, and how it might be a task that feels very emotionally overwhelming for some. And want to just really encourage everybody to go at a pace that you can tolerate, right? Is there a way to find an ally or a friend to help you? Is there a way that maybe a neighbor, you could create a buddy system that like one week you're going to help your neighbor and then the next week your neighbor's going to help you? Like, how can we really create a support system around getting this task done? I think it's really important to note the emotional toll that it can take in remembering what's been lost and to really take care of yourself. Here at the fund, we talk a lot about SMART goals, and I'm just going to do just a quick little ditty on that in case it helps anybody, but really trying to break down a very big task into small, measurable, achievable steps. And you are the expert in your life, so you know if that's a 30-minute session with your timer. Is it an hour session? Is it once a day, once a week, twice, whatever fits in the context of your life? You are the expert. But really to start thinking about what Andrew mentioned, right? Room by room, section by section, a little bit at the time, right? To really just provide some boundaries for yourself and to take good care as you sort of go down this path, which could only imagine is full of so many memories and really heightening the feelings of loss. Um, Okay, so I know you touched on it a little bit, but wondering if you could go a little bit more specifically around what items to include. I know we have folks that have so much of their professional crafts, their instruments or their kits, things, both the professional and personal items. Should those be included? And do I need to separate out those in categories, or could you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Um, just really quickly before I jump into that, I also wanted to mention that as far as helping survivors to map out their personal property, one thing that I've also done as just acting as a support unit is if people feel like they don't have the time to kind of structure things out, I've scheduled 30 minutes, 45 minutes, up to an hour to just sit there with you and go through paperwork and go through documents to kind of help. Sometimes you just need to talk it out with somebody, and that kind of gets the memory going. And so I'm happy to do that at any time for anybody who needs that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But to answer your question, as far as the insurance categorization, um, it would be recommended to utilize the format that we currently have with the United Policyholders template. That's a really good starting point. But when we look at general categories, it could be things like furniture, appliances, clothing, electronics, kitchenware, tools and equipment, bedding and linens, medical or accessibility items, children's items, outdoor or garage items. If you have anything else that could be added in its own separate category, I would just kind of continue to build on that, so that way the adjuster would know kind of like where these things lie. Same thing for FEMA. We would just kind of copy that over, but focus on those essential categories specifically for FEMA. There's also subcategories that you can add. So, for example, if you had appliances, maybe you had kitchen appliances or outdoor appliances. There's a number of different things that you can add as a subcategory within that personal property list, and that will kind of just help the adjuster to better understand where that item should be best placed if one of these general categories doesn't quite fit the mark.
Thank you for those specifics. And I know we get a lot of questions about what if I just don't remember the cost of things, the value of things. I've lived in my home for 20 years. I don't have the receipt of my couch that I bought, right, from Macy's 20 years ago. Like a lot of confusion around what to do if you don't know how to attribute a value. And so wondering if you could talk through some of those strategies.
Sure. So this would kind of touch base on estimating a reasonable replacement value, assuming without receipts. So when you assign values to your items, it doesn't really require receipts or exact prices. FEMA and the insurance expect realistic replacement estimates based on what it would cost to buy a similar item today. So I want to highlight the keyword similar, not identical. So if you are identifying what items you want to replace, for example, like a queen mattress, maybe a microwave or a TV, you would be advised to look up comparable items either at retailers such as Target or Amazon, Home Depot. You don't need the same brand or model you owned before. You just need to know what it would cost to replace at the normal or reasonable price point. So for a lot of people, when it comes to like items that you've had for 20 plus years, maybe they don't make that item maybe anymore. Maybe it's an heirloom, maybe it's an inheritance, from a longer time period, and they just don't have something that exists for that. The best resource to utilize at that point would be something as closely possible to compare to. And if you have photos of those things, definitely using that or specific receipts, if you are able to find those, will absolutely help to bridge the gap. But at the same time, with the different AI resources that are out there, like Bevel, it's a really unique situation where you just put a photo up, it maps out all the items. It doesn't give you like the exact brand, but it will definitely categorize it for you. So if you have pictures, but you don't know what that thing is called, it might be able to do that just exactly like that and map it out for you. Um, when we're looking at the values that reflect the general quality of the items that you had, most households will have what we call average quality items. So there's nothing pristine or brand new for items that are 20, 30, 40 years old. Um, FEMA would expect replacement prices based on average quality goods. And if you don't have receipts for either the insurance or FEMA, they have their own database of how much something costs based on historical payouts. So if you paid like $400 for a pillow and you don't have a receipt for that, they may just give you $15 for a pillow because that's what they've historically paid out for a number of different claims. Um, so you can round up numbers. If you have a price that's maybe like $25.99, it'd be easier to just say $26 when you're pricing everything out. Um, what else can I say? If you own multiples of an item, I would just calculate the total and then the quantity within that category. So if you add like a dinner table and four chairs, I think it would be a very long list if you itemized, how many of those chairs and how many dishes that you had along with their prices. So just quantifying everything together and putting it in just one section would also help to make it easier to digest when someone's looking at this list. Um, Regarding insurance, there may be something called depreciation for older items. Um, they will determine what would qualify for depreciation. Um, when survivors are submitting their personal property list, we would not want to add depreciation to that item. So we just want to find out what similar items cost around the same, and then use that as a base point, and then let the insurance cover that if we don't have receipts or statements or anything to prove what the actual value was for those items.
So great. And I know in our conversation the other day, you'd mentioned a couple things I just want to highlight here. So they just seem so smart, but how to use credit card statements. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Sure. Working with your creditors to get those statements out and identify, when you purchase something roughly. I had to do it just the other day, and I'm not, filing any insurance claim, but I wanted to find out, how much this item cost. And I had to go through my bank statement and my credit card statement to look back like sometime last year to find out like what that exact item was and how much it cost. And so that's the same process that you could do for your personal property and also for FEMA. So if you are able to pull those statements, sometimes I think banks will hold up to 5 years of statements for you. You may be able to request more, but the same thing with the credit cards. You can do the same thing. They should all have that data available for you to pull from. It is a lengthy process, but if you are able to, depending on like what banking institution you're with, they may have some internal software where you can kind of filter out based on the item, uh, with the credit card platforms as well. But if you're able to just Control F, if you open up as a PDF and you try to type in, maybe they'll have the specific item or the brand name in the transaction description. If not, then you'll just have to kind of really comb through carefully to make sure that you find the item that you're looking for. But I've helped people navigate that as well. It is a very doable process, although it can take a little bit longer than expected. But there's one client that I've worked with in particular that has mapped out over 50,000 items using his bank statements and credit card statements. So it is absolutely doable.
Wow, that's a lot. I think another strategy you had said, I guess, when you're just really, kind of completed your assessment and you realize there's just some things that could you talk a little bit how you might use a personal statement with a notary?
Yes, so that's another one that is specific to the insurance company. So if you have like a small business, or if you're just this is for your personal inventory claim process, and you don't have any other kind of forms of identifying or verifying the items that you had, um, it doesn't qualify across all insurance companies, but there have been cases where if you have a statement from either a family member or a friend who can attest that you had these items and have it notarized, it may be accepted as a approved form of documentation to continue your claim.
Thank you. Thank you for that one. And I guess before we move on to the next section, I just wanted to ask what I'm thinking that other people were thinking is just, what if I don't remember everything? Like, what if what happens? What if I just don't remember everything?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a very common question. How are we expected to remember, the 50,000 plus items that we may have in our home from the moment we moved in, right? That is a very, very daunting task for a lot of people, and sometimes you can get analysis paralysis, from that and lengthen the process. There is no easy way to um, really fully map out what everyone lost unless you have good documentation. So the best thing that I can recommend is, again, going back to photos, personal statements from your friends and family who have been there with you, who can help to kind of map things out. Really utilizing the extent of the external resources from where you purchase these items. That would be the single best way to try to help bridge that gap from memory. And utilizing AI is another resource to look at. But unfortunately, if we can't remember everything, it's really hard to try to show the insurance that these items existed, especially if it's a total loss. If it's not a total loss and it's like a smoke damaged property, there's typically a much easier process to because those items would still be on the property. So taking photos and mapping things out would be a little bit easier that way. But for a lot of people that I think that is on the call today, I think we all experience total loss. So it's just trying to utilize the best of memory, the best of others' memories, photo proof, any type of statements or otherwise to help bridge that. Because once you submit everything over to the insurance, there is no going to be, once it's closed, there's no way to kind of reopen that. So some items may be lost permanently as a result of that. And our goal is to try to help that from happening.
Whew, okay. Thank you. And then as I'm hearing you talk, I guess, is there a time boundary or time sensitivity to when we would need to complete the property loss inventory? Is that based on our insurance, our own individual insurance? Like, do we need to
Yeah.
be aware of time, I guess is my question.
I would say for FEMA, there is a time limit. With the insurance claim, each claim is going to be different, and the timelines are going to be different. My hope is that everyone's has already started moving and that we're, close to completion into 2026. But there are still many people who haven't even sent in a personal property list item, and that will definitely take a long time for them to map out and so forth. So there's not going to be a deadline for the insurance claim if you have an open claim. If you have not opened your claim, there is a period of time where you won't be able to open one post disaster because there's like a lot of verification issues with that. But with FEMA, if you have an open application with them, they typically allow for you to submit something within, I believe, 60 to 90 days, proof of documentation for either personal property or moving and storage, medical, etc. And then if you get a denial, there tends to be another period of time to appeal, which is anywhere from 60 to 90, sometimes 120 days to submit that documentation. And if you do not meet the deadline, it does not necessarily mean that the case is closed. we would just have to call FEMA to request that they reopen the application. And they typically just need a reason to know why we weren't able to submit on time. And a lot of times it's just, well, we're waiting on the insurance or we're waiting on this to kind of come in. And they're very accommodating about that. So it's not the end of the world if we get a denial or a case closed. We can always call to reopen it. So it's really, if I were to summarize it, I would say it's a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we're going to pause here too, just to see if there are any specific questions around how to begin, how to start, some areas people might have run into that are causing you to pause or some paralysis. I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but I'm just going to pause for a few seconds to see if anybody has anything related to this section that you think it would be helpful to bring to the group. Same thing if anybody has done some helpful strategies that they wanted to share with participants today. That's always really powerful to hear from other people who've made it through some of this. Okay. So Andrew, we're gonna assume we did it. We have our inventory sheet. Walk us through a little bit just so we're all clear about like the next step, right? We completed it. What's our next step?
Sure. So once you have your personal property inventory list fully mapped out to the best of your ability, you would then send that to your adjuster. After that, your adjuster and their team will review and determine what they can approve. If there's any discrepancies, any additional context that they need to know about, they will reach out to you. And it's just making sure that whatever questions they have, we're available to answer that to kind of speed up the process. But typically, once we send that in, if everything looks good, they'll go ahead and give an estimate of what they'll be able to cover. And in the event that it doesn't really quite seem like it's what we were expecting, there is always room to negotiate. So I can touch a little bit more on that subject if it would help. Let's say, for example, you have submitted maybe $100,000 worth of inventory, and that's the max of your policy, right? And they give you an estimate for maybe $75,000. If you don't feel that that's appropriate and that maybe they didn't fully price out properly the items that you had and you had receipts or other type of proof, you can absolutely dispute that and request that they reevaluate it. But it would become a negotiation process. So as a survivor, we are able to, or even just as a claims holder, right, we are able to negotiate with the insurance adjuster one-to-one. The problem is, especially early on in the disaster, a lot of people have felt kind of stonewalled by their insurance companies, and others had really great experiences. But for the majority, it was just kind of like a waiting period to figure out like what's next. And if that's you, there are ways to kind of bypass that or at least get support to move that along. One way is working with us at Operation Hope. We can call the insurance adjuster and be on the call with you to support, to kind of help move along your claim and ask the right questions to make sure that we have a full understanding of what's needed to move the policy forward or the case forward. We're not licensed. We're not like insurance adjusters or anything on that means. So our role is very limited to just advocacy. But if you want to get professional help, you can either work with a public adjuster who kind of acts like a pro bono insurance adjuster that is focused on your side of the policy and maximizing the amount that you can get out of that policy. They are licensed, they do have certifications, and they do have working relationships with the major insurance companies, but they do take a percentage of what they negotiate out of your policy. So if you got quoted for $25,000 for your inventory, but you know that you can max out the $100,000 you have for personal property, if they're able to get you even close to that, they may take a certain percentage off of what they negotiated extra. So in a lot of ways, it's a win-win for both you as the claim holder and for them as the adjuster. It doesn't apply to everyone, though. There's typically two times that they can enter successfully. It's either at the very beginning or towards the end of the policy. So if you're feeling that you have your inventory list and you're close to having it closed out, but you have some problems, it may be worth to give them a call. We can't endorse like any one group or another, but I will say that if you would like for us to hop on a call with them to learn a little bit more about what their services are, what their success rates are, etc., I'm more than happy to do that. I've done that for multiple people now. Yeah, that's something that we can definitely do to support. On the off chance that the claim is just not moving forward, you're not getting the kind of support that you need, and it's already been some time. Maybe the adjuster is kind of ignoring you, or whatever the case is, where it feels like it's starting to personally impact you. There's always the solution of getting first an adjuster, but then if you need to escalate it, I do know that there are some people who have worked with like an attorney to work on their behalf, not necessarily for litigation, but to work with the adjuster specifically to make sure that they're being fully represented. So I can't really speak too much to that because that's more of a personal decision. But that is something that I've seen take place as far as like the current timeline for survivors. So those are options that you could look at.
Thank you so much for that. And then I think you had mentioned before too that if you are working with your insurance adjuster and they're just unfriendly, you're feeling stonewalled, right? Can you speak to that? We can ask for a different adjuster, right? We can go through our own insurance and ask for a different adjuster. Is that right? Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So before even getting into any type of hostile situations with your adjuster or your insurance company, you are always welcome to request a new adjuster if there is proof that they are not moving the case forward, if they're being aggressive or unresponsive. There's a number of different things that could qualify for a change. And in the event that you cannot do that, maybe they say, sorry, we don't do that. I have seen firsthand public adjusters being able to request that for their clients. And there has been success with that. So I have quite a few clients that I've worked with who have gone through that process. They've either been able to negotiate it themselves or they've gotten outside help to help make that request. And both times they've been able to get that adjusted for them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the specifics. We did have one question that came in that said, is it possible to negotiate for more than the max of the insurance policy?
It really depends. Because the insurance policy is like a contract, there may be like unverified losses that could accumulate as part of the disaster that may be negotiated as far as like not necessarily personal property, but maybe for your dwelling or something else. If you had like an additional unit that should have been covered, but it wasn't. There are very rare cases where you can negotiate successfully a higher amount for your personal property. But I believe that would only be possible with a public adjuster to get involved. And I'm not really too sure what the criteria looks like for that because it's not it's not something that I'm very privy to. But I wish I could speak more to that from personal experience, but it's not something that I think a lot of people find success with.
Thank you. I just want to know, I do see the FEMA question that was asked a little bit. I'm going to get to that. I'm just going to stick right here for this, and then we're going to move into FEMA. So just wanted to make sure the person knows that. Another question is around this area is, what if you have $100,000 personal property, and you have 150,000 of personal property in claims? Should you send every item, right? I guess it's sort of like, what's it worth, the time? I'm not sure if I got that question right, so ask again if I didn't.
I think I understand. So let's imagine that we had $150,000 worth of personal property, but our policy is only 100,000. is it worth it to send everything? So my answer would be yes, it would be worth to submit everything in total for a couple reasons. First and foremost, unless you have receipts for like every single item that you've owned, um, chances are your insurance company is going to allocate a pre-generated price based on what they've paid for historically in the past for the items that don't have like a receipt. And so that could significantly reduce your overall payout. So if you had $150,000 in items, and let's say they evaluated that and saw that you fully maxed out your policy, right? They could justify, or not justify, but they could utilize these pre-generated prices to kind of like fully price out everything that wasn't uh, having like a receipt to then give you the full amount of your policy. Or they may say, if you do have receipts, they may say something along the lines of like, "Hi, this is your policy limit. You've exceeded that, and here's the amount, or here are the items that were not covered in those item in that claim. If there are any items there that could fall into what FEMA would cover, that would then be what we would transition over to FEMA to see if they can cover. And then on the offhand chance that you did have $150,000 in items, maybe they might undervalue all of those items to a certain degree to fall within the $100,000 policy, but maybe it won't be the full amount if you don't have receipts. So there's a couple different variables here that will kind of determine, what you could expect to get from your policy.
Great. And I know you started to mention FEMA, and I'm just going to take the opportunity to transition to FEMA because I'm just sort of aware of our time. So when do we submit to FEMA? So we've kind of gone through the insurance. When do we submit to FEMA?
So for some people, there's like a displacement application that you could fill out with FEMA. They would cover a certain amount of money. There's rental assistance programs that you can get with FEMA that you could have started off with already. There is moving and storage, which is another thing that you could have gotten started from early on. So there are some variables with FEMA as far as like when you can get started. Technically, everybody could have gotten started like from the moment the disaster was declared, the day after. But with personal property, that's really the only one, aside from medical, are typically the only ones that require a claim to be closed out before you can take advantage of anything else with FEMA. So if there are other items within the FEMA application, like the different categories, people are working and getting rental assistance right now, but they're still working on their FEMA application. I'm sorry, their insurance claim. So I think it's just limited to just those two things that need to be closed out before you can move forward with FEMA on those personal items. Everything else you should be able to work with if you qualify for it.
Great. And then I'm going to go to our FEMA question, which was one of our participants received both a denial and a case closed from FEMA, saying that the application can't be approved because they had insurance on their home, right? And the question was, the insurance was negligible compared to what they need to spend to rebuild. So does their determination still hold, or is there a way to still get help from FEMA? And what would be the steps if the answer is yes?
Sure. So I cannot speak for FEMA as far as like what they can do or like what they will do in this context, but I can tell you what we can do in this context. So if you get a denial and it's a final determination, it does not necessarily mean that the case is closed. We can always call to request that they reopen it. They will just ask for some context as to why we want to open this back up. Maybe we have new information. Maybe we have further documents to prove, what the situation calls for. Maybe we didn't submit something on time, and we need to resubmit that to get an evaluation. That would be the first step for us to do would be to call FEMA directly and request a reconsideration. And typically, with a reconsideration, would require a letter. So we have a format that I can share that kind of covers what that would look like as far as like an appeal template. Um, and so uh, that I can also share at the end of the webinar here as part of the resources to connect everyone with. But that'll be something to sign and fill out and submit, just like you're doing an appeal letter. And then that should ideally reopen the case, and then we could submit whatever documents we need to, or speak to a specialist to understand what's in the case files to verify if there is maybe a miscommunication on their part, or if we need to talk to the insurance company and get specific documentation from them to submit to the FEMA specialists. There's a number of different ways we can go about that, but the first step would be to call and request a reconsideration, and just kind of get a full understanding of kind of what's been sent to them, so I can understand like how we can next get started.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, we hear a lot all the time. I think it can be a common experience that people have felt very underwhelmed and frustrated that they didn't get what they thought they were going to get from FEMA, or they feel like they've gotten so little from FEMA what in relationship to what they understand is out there. And so if we have participants today that are with us that are just feeling that way, wondering if you could speak to maybe an action step that folks could take to try to get some of their questions answered, to maybe try to get more support or help through FEMA.
Absolutely. With FEMA, there are very limited channels that we can go through to really fully take advantage of the resources that they have. They have their call center, and then they have like a team, behind the scenes that we can always escalate things to if we need to. We have a partnership with FEMA and the Small Business Administration. So that means that we have contacts behind the scenes that we can always escalate things to if we explore every single option that we can on our own. So that being said, as far as resources go, if you're finding that you are underinsured, maybe FEMA didn't give the amount that you were hoping for, and same with the insurance claim, there are other resources through nonprofits that can support either with financial assistance or like physical resources like furnitures, bedding. I mean, there's a number of different things that are available out there. And part of what I do is connect with nonprofits that are offering those services, or faith-based organizations or otherwise that can help alleviate some of those pain points, and connect you to them. So that's something that we do every day. And it's at no cost to you to take advantage of those things. And so if you ever need any type of resources like that, just let me know what the needs are, and I can go ahead and look in our database to find who would be the best resource to connect you with.
Thank you so much. And then I know we had talked about that release of information form that you had talked about. I just didn't know if you wanted to briefly speak to that so people are aware of that.
Yes, absolutely. When working with Operation Hope or a nonprofit, or if you want to assign a family member to kind of take over your FEMA application, there's a form called a release of information form. It's found on the FEMA website, and that is a document that will be provided to you all at the end of this call. That form is essentially what's used to allow for a third party to receive information about the status of your FEMA application. So if I were to call FEMA, I would need to have this form filled out by the survivor to validate that I'm an authorized user to call and ask questions about the case file, or what the specific context is that we received a denial for, to speak to a specialist, or etc. There is some language there that I would definitely highlight as like things to look out for, because if you are, let's say, for example, you have a spouse and you want to transition over, the information over to them so they can act as like the primary person for your account. There is some language in the release of information form. I think it's in section B that will cover what type of information you want FEMA to release to whoever it is that you write in. And for numbers 1 and 2, you'll see that there's a section that'll say your banking information, your social security, etc. And I just want to be very clear here. There should be no nonprofit or support service that would request or need any of that information. It's just not necessary. And so the only things that we would need access to is the case file. And yeah, just basically the case file. So there's 3 options. There's option A, option B, option C. I would say no to number 1 and number 2, and then just put case file notes for number 3, which is the optional manual write-in. You could also cross off any information that you don't want to release and still say yes, and FEMA will understand that you're saying yes to what's not crossed out and no to what's crossed out. And either of those ways of submitting are fine. You can then submit that to the disasterassistance.gov account to upload that. And it typically takes about a week for that to reflect. So if we schedule an appointment and we need to call FEMA for whatever reason, I can freely call with you on the phone and say, hi, I'm here with so-and-so. We have an active ROI. My name is Andrew from Operation Hope. I'm here to call in regards to your case file or to speak to a specialist. And from there, they'll verify that I'm on the form, and then they'll verify that the other party on the phone is the survivor. And then after that, we get to move forward to speaking with whoever we need to identify what's wrong with the case file.
Great information. Thank you so much. And the FEMA release is in the chat. And again, all of our resources that we've talked about today will be sent to everybody who RSVP'd and did participate in today's webinar in the follow-up email that we're going to send. We're going to pause. If there's any questions related to anything we've kind of talked about so far, just want to encourage everybody to put your question in the Q&A. We are coming close to our time boundary. And so this is just an invitation. If there's a burning question that you want to ask, please get it posted in our Q&A. Our last subject area, Andrew, is I'm wondering if you could just share with everybody. It was really interesting when we talked that you shared about the long-term recovery group model that happens after every natural disaster. I'm wondering if you could just speak to that. Just want to make sure everybody has the information and they know sort of what happens in the long-term phases of recovery and the system set up.
Sure, absolutely. So from the beginning, when a disaster is declared, it has to come from FEMA. Once a disaster is declared, FEMA and the Red Cross and a number of other national nonprofits will send resources and staff to the active disaster zone to help contain the situation, and then also be the forefronting body to help support the community in their recovery. After the disaster has been declared as from active to recovering, those parties will leave. So at the American Legion and at the Disaster Center in Altadena, there used to be the recovery centers there where FEMA and SBA and Red Cross and all these other groups were there. They're no longer there because they're now serving in other active disasters across the country. When that happens, the recovery is then up to the community to work together and focus on rebuild initiatives and recovery strategies for the long term. And so there is a body of board members that are part of what we call the Long-Term Recovery Group, or LTRG for short, that act as the community guiding body to help with these recovery initiatives. We also have the county, the city and the state that will be supporting throughout these recovery initiatives, but they tend to lean on the LTRGs to be that day-to-day body to support survivors as like a last line of defense. Let's say if we explore every single nonprofit that's offering services. I've gone through this already with some people, and they've explored everything. Maybe they qualified for some, didn't qualify for others, but they still have what we call an unmet need, which is essentially anything that current normal programs do not cover or that they didn't qualify for, and they still have this need. Um, that would be something that the LTRGs would be able to support with. So if you're underinsured, or if you have catastrophic loss, or if they're, maybe you're still unhoused, like there's a number of different factors that kind of tie into what an unmet need is. But essentially, working with a case manager, which is essentially a social worker, um, that's a resource that I think everyone should be able to take advantage of. It's available to you at no cost, similar to what Operation Hope does. After the call, if there's anyone who's interested in learning more about that, I have access to those resources and can share them with you directly and make referrals to these case managers, who essentially will act as a social worker to help you from where you're at now, create a recovery roadmap for you, and help you to actively tackle those obstacles, and connect you with resources similar to what I'm doing throughout the entirety of your recovery journey. So, working with Operation Hope and with a case manager are two overlapping layers of support that I think would everyone would benefit from. And the primary purpose for the case manager is to identify unmet needs and help to create a case to present to the long-term recovery group. Um, a quick caveat, or just a quick note about that: the long-term recovery group only reviews anonymous cases. So whether it's the Palisades LTRG, the Malibu LTRG, or the Altadena LTRG, um, it goes to where you were previously living pre-disaster, and the board will review that as an anonymous case. So they don't know your name, ethnicity, like any background, or the address where you were to identify who you are. They just know what your needs are and what kind of resources that you looked at before coming to the unmet needs roundtable. Um, if you get approved for support, then it's a financial amount. So it could be, I mean, I can't really speak to the numbers, but there is a financial aspect to it where they can compensate a certain amount of money to help you kind of narrow that gap to your recovery. It's not supposed to make everyone whole, but if you've tried everything, this is like a last line of defense to give you those extra resources you need. And it will be distributed directly to you from the Unmet Needs Roundtable. And all the LTRGs can speak more to it, so I highly recommend getting involved with them if you haven't already. All of them have a registration to get involved with a case manager, as well as to take advantage of the resources there. But also, if you need a warm handoff, I'm more than happy to connect you with them as well. And my counterpart, Nikki, who's a part of both the Palisades and Malibu LTRGs, we'd be happy to connect you to any of those resources as well.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That's fabulous information. And again, just want to make sure everybody knows that there's a direct link to get connected to Andrew, right? He has shared so many nuggets, right, and actionable steps. But most importantly, if you need support in any of these things, it might just be one session with Andrew. It's really available to you at no cost, and we want to make sure everybody can access it. So if you get stuck, you're having a trouble getting connected, please reach out to the Entertainment Community Fund, our intake line, and we will make sure that you get connected to Andrew and to Operation Hope. So let's see. I'm going to see if there's any more questions that have come in. Let's see. Oh no, Emily, are we okay? Emily's curating our questions. I don't see any other more questions. Any other questions? Is that right? Okay.
There was one more I just put in Teams, Tina.
Okay, thank you so much. So the question is, in trying to use my time more efficiently, I'm wondering about what a best practice of presenting my inventory would be without going overboard, right? So is there a combination of an item list, a purchase price, receipts, and photos, or should I just delve into receipts if requested later on by my adjuster? So kind of just going back to those actionable steps, like what's too much? And what's like a practical, reasonable amount that somebody should be doing? Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, that is all dependent on you as the individual. Um, it really depends on what items you do have and how much items you have to really understand if it's worth the time of, because for example, if I had, um, 200,000 items, for example, I think the client that I mentioned earlier, he mapped out over 50,000 items. That took him 6 months to do. And he got a payout for that, which was great. But the time that it took for him to do that was painstaking because he used his receipts, he used his statements, his credit card statements, bank statements. So it's really just depend on, um, do you have enough items to max out your policy? And if you do, do you want to include more to make sure that you do get the full amount in your policy? That would be the first question. And if the answer is yes, then I can't speak for any one person, but I can say that if you're trying to save time and you know that you're going to get the most that you can out of your policy, then if you are okay with not documenting some of those items, it is a personal choice. But you will not be able to use a list with those items that were not accounted for to submit to FEMA. It has to be part of what was already identified with the insurance adjuster to then say they didn't cover this, so we're going to go and see if FEMA can cover it. So I hope that answers that question. But as far as like the timeline to use it, if you're trying to map something out very quickly, using that software, bevel.com, bevel.com, I'll also send that as well. That is something that people have been receiving very good reviews. I took a look at it myself, and the only thing that I can really say towards it is that it is SOC2 compliance, which means that your data does not get sold or shared or presented anywhere else. It is just a mapping out tool. So that means that, for me, anything I recommend or anything that I look at needs to be in the survivor's best interest to say, yes, you should look at this. So that is one resource that I know my senior leadership has found very favorable. And again, we may be including that within our own internal platform very soon. So if you're able to use that and you find that that is a quicker way to kind of map everything else out, again, the insurance adjuster will map their own prices if you don't have receipts. So maybe it might be worth to include the full amount if we don't have receipts to make sure that you maximize the most that you can. But again, it's a personal choice. I know it takes a long time, but it can be worth it.
Great. Okay. I think that was our last question. So as we round out our time, just wanted to highlight to everybody, we continue to um, try to listen and understand the phases of recovery our community is going through, and we have a commitment to continue to provide topic-based educational webinars. So if there is a topic you think that we should focus on in the future, please let us know, reach out. You can email us at western@intake.org, entertainmentcommunity.org. That'll be in your resource sheet. We continue to offer the spaces that I spoke about earlier, a weekly drop-in group and our 4-week grief and recovery group. We are planning to host a January 7th sort of commemorative space. So look out for that if you'd like to join us for that. We are thinking of everybody. We are here to help. Help me thank Andrew for your time today. Thank you for all of your information and the hard work you're doing in helping everybody. And we wish everybody very well. Know that we're here to help and reach out if you need us. So thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you, everybody. Take good care. And this will conclude our webinar.
Thank you.